Hi, everybody. Most of you know me. I'm your professor, Wenzel, Andrea Wenzel. I am the advisor in CSIT department chair, co-department chair with Pam King. Welcome. I know most of you are required to be here. If you did not sign in when you walked in, please make sure you sign in when you walk out. Okay. I want to welcome all of our panelists. Thank you so much for coming tonight, guys and ladies. And with that being said, would you like to introduce yourselves? Okay.
Sure. Hey, I'm Dustin Wasserman. I am a quality assurance manager at a company called Ultimate Knowledge Institute. I actually went to Chestnut Hill, so alum. Thank you.
Hi, my name is True Win. I am a leader of an IT service desk team at a company called US Align, located in Wayne, technically near King of Prussia. Pleasure to be here.
Hey, how are y'all doing? My name is Cody Jett. I am a Chestnut Hill alumni. I think I graduated in 2012. I'm getting old. I'm a director of analytics for Johns Hopkins Hospital. So my team, relatively new, growing pretty quickly. We run all of the analytics for the hospital.
Hey everyone, I'm Jack McGinley. I am a senior instructional designer at a company called Finxact, which was recently acquired about 2 years ago by a much larger company called Pfizer. Not Pfizer, the drug company, Pfizer, the fintech company. I graduated actually twice from here, one with my undergrad in computer and information technology, and then once more with my master's in instructional design.
Hello, my name is Kevin Dorsey. I'm currently the product operations manager for GoGuardian Beacon. Before that, I was the director of technology for over a decade at the Pennsbury School District. Additionally, I'm an adjunct professor in the education department at Chestnut Hill.
Thank you. I'm Desiree Trevino. I'm a sales engineer at FreedomPay. It's fintech. Before that, I used to live in Mexico, and I had my own tech startup.
Hi, I'm Mike Gallagher. I'm a senior software developer at the American Board of Internal Medicine. Graduated from LaSalle University, but I am Chestnut Hill adjacent. My wife works upstairs in this building here.
Thank you, everybody. All right. Before I start asking the questions that everybody kind of created on their own, does anybody want to ask a question to get started? Okay. I figured as much. Hence why we did questions beforehand. All right. So I'm going to start off with some education background. What made you pick this field in particular? Any of you can go. I don't mind.
Yeah, so I actually went to Chestnut Hill. My degree was not in technology. I really liked college. I was a elementary education, criminal justice, and a minor in sociology. So I was actually an elementary school teacher for a couple of years. Afterwards, it just wasn't my passion, and I got a job working at Nutrisystem, the weight loss company, with my sister, and I just found myself loving data and analytics. And I'll be honest with you, I wanted to get in the field, but I also wanted to pick a field that I would be comfortable living in. So I did Google high-paying jobs with best job outcomes. To be completely transparent, that is one of the biggest reasons why I got in this field. And it is true. It does have great outcomes, and financially we are taken care of. And then I went back and got my master's degree from Drexel. But I picked it because I love data, I love analytics. I feel like I'm a detective sometimes at my job, and every day is a different problem, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, so I was originally a bio major here, but organic chemistry kicked my butt. So I decided to go into tech. The real decision maker there was my other passion, psych, was did not make enough money without going and getting your PhD and whatnot. So that's kind of why I chose this field, and honestly, no regrets. I love it. The pay, the people, and like the amount of things you get to do, it's not as constrained as a lot of different fields. Can really do anything with tech and software and things like that.
I think what got me into this field originally was growing up with my dad, we would work on computers a lot. So it was something I was really good at, I guess, at a young age, just because I had a lot of exposure to it. But I also kind of came up when I was your guys' age, like Facebook was just becoming a big thing, and startups were kind of like changing the world and how we do things every day, like Uber. And all the things like that. So I saw that as an opportunity of like, maybe I could work at this cool company and make an impact on the world at large. So yeah, that's kind of why I got into computers and stayed into it. And yeah, the benefits and everything are great. So it's definitely a great industry.
I wanted to be an astronaut when I grew up. So I chose mechatronics engineer, which I thought might turn into me being an astronaut. And when I started studying that and leaning into software, I kind of found software like more challenging on one side, but also easier because there's no hardware. So it kind of went, the path created its own.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a pilot, then I wanted to be an entrepreneur and own a restaurant, and then from there, I went into school as an undergraduate. I was a business major, and probably halfway through my undergraduate year, I realized that was a mistake for me, and at that time, our MIS teacher was giving us an assignment to learn something about web development, and that's pretty much the point when I realized where my passion actually was. So, it just goes right along with my childhood, taking things apart, anything that I could take apart and put back together. So that's where I love software development. Hi.
Sorry, I came a little bit late. I'm coming straight from work, so I'm a little bit out of breath. But I can introduce myself. My name is Matt. I graduated from the class of 2020 with a bachelor's degree in computer systems management. I currently work at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Excuse me, at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia in the IT department. So, what's the question? I'm sorry. Oh, so I started learning IT in high school. So I went to a vocational trade school in West Philly called Mercer Vocational High School. And so I learned a trade up there, computer technology, and from there I continued my studies to Chestnut Hill. And so I originally started as a major in computer technology and computer science, but I ended up changing my major to computer systems management. So that's what I graduated with, and that's what I stick with today.
Hi, I also had a lot of interest in technology growing up, like the last two gentlemen, solving problems, taking things apart. I actually, due to expectations from family, was going to be a pharmacist, so that didn't pan out. And I'm glad I did not become a pharmacist at Temple. But I lead a help desk here or at USLI, and a lot of what we do is solving problems, software, hardware, and I've always had interest in solving problems, breaking them down, and enjoyed conveying complex topics to people that I was helping or teaching that now to my team. They say that to really have an understanding of something, you have to be able to describe it simply. So I teach that to the students that work for our team here, one of which is in our audience. So that was my passion always, technology. It wasn't the first thing I chose at school, but I'm glad that I'm here. And it's really nice. I enjoy the challenge, and the people that I work with, and the benefits are great too.
Okay. Was that everybody? I think we got everybody. So, next question. What is something you wish you would have learned in college that you didn't, whether it be a skill or some sort of something that you would have found in your early career that would have been helpful?
So this is more of a skill. I wish I learned to sell myself. Because when you're in college, you feel almighty and you don't understand that you actually have to give a good impression to people and how much ahead of everything that puts you. When you learn how to show your skills and sell yourself to your employers, to your teachers, to your classmates or peers at work, that really helps you to people to respect you and to see you in a different light and to jumpstart your career. So if I could go back to when I was 20 and I felt like I didn't need to prove anything to anyone, that would have saved me some very not so happy experiences if I knew that.
I guess for me, and now that I'm a little bit older in my career, it would have been public speaking. So public speaking, not only talking to a crowd like y'all, but when you're actually talking about your code to your team, to your client, whoever it is, being able to articulate it properly in a way that they can understand is really important. I think I've made it this far in my career because of that ability. So whenever you're speaking about your project or speaking about your code, I highly recommend, and I wish I would have taken this, is take it more serious. When I'm standing in front of the room, practice things. Now I feel like I'm a lot more comfortable. When I first started in this field, when somebody would ask me questions about my code, man, I would mumble and bumble my way through, and I just wish earlier in my career I would have focused on that. Once I got comfortable with that, I feel like I started making leaps and bounds in my career.
Yeah, hi. I think we're all on the same page so far, because I also wanted to say soft skills were something that I wish I learned more about in college. I've received praise a few different times from different employers about how I can explain the software to both a developer and to the client. And so working at the American Board of Internal Medicine, I'm not necessarily working for clients, but with doctors. And so if we receive a support call from a doctor, they don't want to hear about the software, but they do need to be able to talk to you and explain what problem they might be having when they're logging into our portal. So soft skills is definitely something that I'm going to agree with, that I wish I learned more about in college.
I hate to be repetitive, but it's going to be soft skills. If I was your age right now and asked to sit here, I'd be much different, much less composed, much more nervous. And so that goes to say that you really should put this at the forefront. It's one thing to be intelligent. It's one thing to know your technical, material, code. But can you get up and explain it to somebody who's going to be the one to determine how much money you make or your advancement in your career? You need to be able to think about impressing people and conveying your intelligence. So yeah, I also would echo everything that's been said, that I wish that I paid more attention to it, that there was more of an emphasis for us when we were younger. But you guys are here now, and it's something that we value very much here at our company. Again, we're not even looking for someone who's super technical at the entry level, but willing to be able to speak, get up there, get uncomfortable, and then you will be more comfortable after repetition. Anybody who's here who's an athlete, I'm sure when you were learning how to do something, a tennis swing, a catch, whatever, you're not great at it, but you get good at it because you practice it and you put it at the forefront. So, a long time ago, people, here may think that IT is somewhere you don't want to call because they're condescending, they look down on you, they're impatient because, oh wow, they're so smart. But we don't want that. We don't want people to fear calling us, and we want people who call us to feel good that they did and that we're able to help them and make them feel good. So yeah, soft skills are so important. It's something that we really do value, and we don't want, just all technical skills and not an ability to listen or speak.
For myself, working in machine learning and artificial intelligence that detects if a child is at risk to themselves and or others is a rather unique position. Sadly, the ML does not always get it right, and students do succeed. And with that experience of working in a school district for all those years, and then flipping and working in the corporate side, learning to listen, and that soft skill of just listening to your customers, to your user base, and trying to put yourself in their shoes, because they're extremely frustrated or upset, and it gives them an opportunity for them to build trust with you. And that was definitely a skill I did not have starting off early in my career.
So I'm a dare to be different. Well, I wholeheartedly agree with everything they were saying. For me personally, it's boils down to self-sufficiency. So one skill that's not really taught as much is kind of how to go about solving a specific problem. So, for example, I actually ended up getting a job because someone asked me, what do you do when you don't know what to do? I looked back and forth and said, I Google it. And that in itself is something that people may not always know how to do. Being able to go and, when you're asking someone else for help, say, I've already tried X, Y, and Z, very important. But also knowing how to properly ask those questions. So, for example, Googling things, one. Another thing, become a lot more popular, ChatGPT, knowing how to structure actual questions to guide yourself on prompts. These are all tools to make us better, not kind of things to replace us or anything like that, not to do the work for us, but it makes it a little bit better. One big thing that I actually do is when I have a question, when I'm actually have a coding question or something like that, I'm trying to figure something out, I'm having a problem, I want to ask on Stack Overflow, right? A bunch of people smarter than me there. But the internet is a fun place. So if you ask a question that's not so great or is kind of a simple answer, you're going to get called out. So I make sure I do my research and do it first so no one's trying to call me out online and saying, hey, this was something very simple that you missed. And through actually searching and doing all that, which is one of those things I learned to do in the field, usually I don't even get to press send on my question. I usually don't even post it because I usually find the answer because I think of how would I tear this apart? What other information would I need if I were these people answering those questions? So to bring it back all to self-sufficiency, being able to do that before asking someone else. And then the last thing is if you can't figure it out, being willing to ask for the help, but knowing that you have to say, I tried X, Y, and Z first. So, yep.
So one thing is learning how to write emails properly. It's one thing to write emails to clients, but it's another thing to write them professionally and the correct way. So one thing I'm kind of learning that that while I can write professional emails to client standard, normal everyday clients that I work with, there's a different kind of way to write emails to directors or to people of executive leadership that I work with, not on a daily basis, but kind of having that email etiquette and understanding how I can write emails to be able to include the right information to be able to help the directors understand what I'm trying to explain, and if they do have any issues, how to kind of include those steps and to be able to properly troubleshoot those issues.
All right, before I jump to the next kind of section, does anybody have questions themselves that they'd like to ask? Jose?
I just want to ask, thank you. For us students, I guess whilst we're here, we would like to fill out our internships, get our experience in. Once we go out, we'd like to find entry-level jobs easily, so to speak. So I'm very interested in hearing your personal stories as to how you got that first internship, how you got that first job.
I can start. So I've done a bunch of stuff. My first real internship was with a city councilman. in the city of Philadelphia. His name was Bill Greenlee. And how I got that was my cousin actually worked there, so that helped a lot. So, but I didn't get paid a lot because he was a city councilman. Not a lot of money in like a re-election campaign for that. So, you know, I went in and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just do this for my cousin. But I started building his website and pamphlets and designing all this kind of crazy stuff. And then I just started getting other web design jobs out of that, like from people that knew people. They'd be like, hey, you're good at making websites. Can you make a website for so-and-so? So I started building kind of a network of people that would ask me to do stuff and kind of freelance that way. And then also a very good thing to do before you even get your internship is there's nothing stopping you from making something yourself, right? Even if it's an app or something that isn't really even used, and just start building stuff like that. So you have something to talk about in an internship, something to show and say, hey, like this is what I'm working on and it's just kind of something for fun. That's always cool to see someone kind of bring something in. After I did that for his re-election campaign, which was about half a year, I landed, while I was in grad school, an internship at QVC. So you see how I kind of like jumped up there to a major company. So, and I think that's a really good thing to do with your internships too, is like work at a small company, work at a big company. Bigger companies are going to look really good on your resume, but you might get a little siloed in your work, if that makes sense. So you might have to do this like one specific thing. Like I was stuck just like, it wasn't WordPress, but it was very simple website making on QVC. And it was very like, you know, hand it off. You get this image from here. You get the text from copyright. You get the images from your graphic designers, and you get the layout from your UX designers. But when I worked for Bill Greenlee, I got to do all that stuff myself. So I had experience not only working in a larger company, but also like a smaller company where I got to wear a lot of different hats. And that's how I kind of built out like my skills, right? So I was able to go to a bigger company and say, okay, I kind of know what they're looking for when they're hiring someone for like an internship here or an entry-level job. Like I'm going to like target exactly what the job is. But then when I interviewed at Finxact, that was a startup and I was the 25th person. So you can kind of see how I can go back to my experience at like Bill Greenlee and like working on my own and being able to say like, hey man, I'm self-sufficient. Give me anything you want to do and I'll do it. Like, you know, like my job title is learning design and doing that kind of stuff. But like I've been at the company for 6 years and they still have not hired a UX designer. So you know who does the UX design? Me. You know who does the voiceovers for all the videos? Me. You know who edits all the videos? Me. Like, you know, it's just like, hey, if we need something to look nice, like just send it to Jack. And that's like not my job, but like, that's how I got a foot in the door, you know, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, so I would say like my first real job, so I really wanted to do the healthcare. And I interviewed with CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, for analytics role position. Man, that interview was so bad. I'm not even going to sugarcoat, it was not a good interview and I did not get that job. I actually had a recruiter at the time say, are you sure you're actually made for this industry? Like literally called me up. I was supposed to be meeting her to get coffee and she literally was like, didn't even show up. She just called me and was like, I don't think you have it. And I was like, well, that sucks. But I learned from that first interview, I was not prepared. As in, I wasn't prepared to talk about myself and get comfortable talking about myself, not in an egotistical way, but talking about my strengths and my weaknesses. I think sometimes when we do that first interview, we're shy to be like, I'm really good at this, and this is what I did, X, Y, and Z. And that's okay. I think the first time I was just very sheepish. You know, I was really good at this, but I didn't want to brag. I didn't want to come off as cocky. The second time, so another position opens up at CHOP, and this time around, I listened to what they told me when I didn't get the job. I got the interview, and I thought I crushed it. I felt great, and I got the phone call, and I got the job. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm like, I showed I was technical. I showed I could do the job. So I start the job, and I become really close with my mentor at the time. And he's like, I was like, so like, I nailed that interview. He's like, oh gosh, no, that was a terrible interview. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, you were really good, but there other people are technical than you. I was like, well, why did I get the job? And he was honest. He's like, we just loved your attitude. He loved that, like, I didn't know the answer. So I said, well, I don't know that. Could you walk me through it? And I was really open when I didn't know things, and I was really honest about those types of things. Got the job, and honestly, months passed by, and the guy's name's Tony, and I'm still really close with him. He looks around and goes, man, you are our best hire. He was like, technically, you're stronger than you came off in your interview. Personality-wise, you get it. you're able to work with others. You're able to talk to leadership in a professional manner. So again, you may, to be honest with you, getting into this field, learn from your interviews. It's okay to email them back, like, hey, I didn't get the role. Could you give me some pointers? Because that's what happened. I got the pointers, I applied them, and I got the job because I felt more comfortable, I felt more confident. And was my technical skills good at the time? Yeah, probably not, guys. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. I look back at when I wrote code back then, it was not good. It was not good, but I learned and I got better every day, and yeah.
I'm going to flip that question around a little bit instead of when I first went into the field, because to be honest, I have no degree in IT. I just work in IT. But when I was the director of technology in Pennsbury, one of the largest school districts in the state, we didn't pay that great for our technicians, to be honest, unless you were there for a couple years. But when I was hiring, I would get a lot of applicants that did not have college degrees. That's already going to give you a leg up. What I was looking for when I was in that hiring manager position, how are your people skills? I would put scenarios in front of my candidates of you're walking into a building to solve, XYZ issue, and a teacher stops you and says that their smartboard's not working, for example. How would you handle that situation? And what I was looking for was to see what were your soft skills, because those that came with a college education, came with an IT background, you already had the technical skills, and I didn't have to teach them. So if I could get you into a seat, into a position quicker because you come with the technical skills and you're able to answer those scenario questions and get to a spot that's on target with customer service, those are the people that I wanted to hire to get on my staff as quick as possible.
Just apply. Like, you don't have no experience. You have to start somewhere, so just apply to the jobs. Even if you feel like you don't cover exactly what it is, let them tell you. Don't decide that before, like, applying. Don't look at a job and say, like, but I'm missing all of this. Just try it and see what happens, and look at the interviews as like a learning experience, like they mentioned. And also consider that at this point that you have no professional experience, any experience might help you, and you can always like start at a job, and it even might help you to say, like, I don't like working at this field or this type of company. I want to look for a smaller one, or if you're in a small one, I want to look for a big one. So just don't close your possibilities.
So one thing I would want to add to that is don't shy away from contracts. One thing I learned, because I graduated in 2020 during the pandemics, I started looking for a job, and nobody was looking for to hire anybody. So I continued looking, and luckily I got an email from Professor Sokolowski, who was the professor at the time for programming. It was a contract for Thomas Jefferson, and it was a temporary contract. It was only for 8 months. So I figured, you know what, let's try it and see. And so I met with the recruiter, and he thought I was a great fit after doing all the tests and what he had me do. And so I went through the interview. Now, granted, I was nervous because it was my first interview after college. But luckily, the manager who was interviewing me, she had patience with me, so she did ask me to take a deep breath, and so I didn't exactly nail the interview, but she definitely gave me a chance, and so I'm not saying that all supervisors and leaders who do the interviews with you will give you that kind of chance, but I would say, don't, if you can, give contracts a try, because those can definitely be a foot in the door, because it will allow you to understand what you want to try and do in your field, because IT is so broad. you know, you can go into cybersecurity, you can go into networking, you can go into IT support, or you can go into programming. So, you know, having those contracts and getting those kind of experiences will really help you in the long run. And hopefully, you know, for me, you know, you know, when after my 8-month contract ended with Thomas Jefferson, they gave me another contract with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And so, you know, I worked hard through the contract, and they actually gave me a full-time offer in August of 2020. And, you know, so far, keeping my fingers crossed, but they really like me there. So give contracts a try as well, along with internships.
I would say be intentional about what you're doing when you're applying, right? You're applying and you want a job, and of course, that's the end goal. But if you're just doing this one and then let's say you don't get it, you get discouraged, that's not going to help you. You should think about applying, getting a lot of interviews, and using them as a means to get experience. Think about what you want to accomplish during that interview. Are you great at talking with people? Do you have a nice smile? Great posture? Can you dress for the occasion? I've interviewed a lot of students for our student program, and some just like wow me. Right now, you that asked the question, you look great. I would have been like an A right there for the dress code. I don't need you to be in a tie or a suit jacket, but you have a button up. That's great. I've had people show up in like graphic T-shirts and, you know, at least on Zoom or Teams. Back when we interviewed before the pandemic for in person, it wasn't as much. But it shocks me sometimes how, unfortunately, ill-prepared some young people are. And if you show up like that, if you show up late, if you have bad posture, if you've got all this stuff going on in the background and you didn't even think to put in a blurred background or some kind of professional setting, why would your chances be any better than someone who's actually got all that down, right? So don't be discouraged if you don't get the interview. From the experience we heard here, everyone has learned from their failures, myself included. But I think I always went in thinking I want to be the best represented candidate that they saw today in the way that I'm speaking, the way that I dress. And trust me, I didn't start off like that. It was a lot of awkwardness and a lot of, well, not a lot, but some rejection, and it hurts. But it's about picking yourself up and doing it the right way, thinking about what you didn't do right, looking at improving.
So I've done a lot of interviewing, and I know a lot of you guys are thinking about that next step. What I tell everybody that interviews with me, I don't want you to be perfect. I want you to be a sponge. I don't care if you're a level 1 or you're coming up to the senior level. There's always something for y'all to learn. Nobody comes in knowing everything. I'm a director at Johns Hopkins, and I'm telling you, I learn something new every day from people, executives above me, analyst ones. It doesn't matter who you are, you're always learning. So that is what I would recommend. Everything people have said here, do. Make sure you look the part, but we're not expecting you to be perfect. If you mess up an answer on an interview, it's not the end of the world. It's really not. I personally have messed up interviews, and I've gotten the job. And I've had people I've interviewed that mumbled through it. The answer was not perfect, but the interview was great. So I do want to point that out. I know a lot of other people that are hiring, we don't expect you to be perfect. So do not put that pressure on yourself.
So I'll first start by saying I'm probably the worst person to ask about an internship. I didn't end up finding one, that I procrastinated, but I ended up making one. I actually ended up doing one here at the school. I found a need and made some software for the school to help out actually the video department, Greg and Don. So ended up doing that and working towards that, which probably wasn't the best thing, but it was a thing. Anyway, as far as actually getting jobs, getting internships, one big strategy that I've been trying to take advantage of is LinkedIn. Having a LinkedIn is really good, not only for just having your name out there, having a place for recruiters to see you, but also when it comes down to internships, jobs, anything like that, people usually get referral bonuses. So you can reach out to people that work at the company and ask to see if they'll refer you. And usually they'll talk to you a little bit first and whatnot. And then you already have a leg up to actually getting something. So that's always a really good strategy and good way to go. Plus networking. Even if it doesn't work out, you might either make a new friend or make a new connection, someone you can learn from, be like, hey, what'd you hear? Sorry, you didn't get the job because you didn't meet this specific little tiny qualification. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I appreciate that, because they don't always give you that feedback. Some companies, when you ask if you go through an interview or anything, get rejected without an interview, anything at all. Sometimes they just don't respond when you say, hey, I'm looking to improve. I'd like to improve for next time. What can I do? And that kind of thing. So can also help there. The next big thing I'll tell you about interviews, just to let you guys know, my background's coding. I basically do a little bit of everything from like product management, program management, stuff like that, to DevOps, everything. So I'm very technical. I've gone through coding interviews. My first job was, I actually remember it was about parsing out brackets and parentheses and whatnot. The important thing about a coding interview itself is that the interviewers aren't looking for your technical skills and kind of syntax knowledge as much as they are trying to figure out how you think, how you actually solve the problem. And one big thing that goes into that is asking questions. So, for example, they might give you part of the problem, and you might have to ask a question to get maybe another requirement out of them or something, a decision, because if you're not going to be asking questions, they may not want to hire you based off of that type of thing. Because if you don't know all the requirements and you don't ask and you just kind of sit there and try to go through it, that can be a negative. But asking the questions, I've even had them try to throw tricks at me and tell me to do something that basically wasn't really possible with what they had. So actually asking questions during an interview, knowing that they're not looking for the specific, this is exactly how we want you to do it, down to the code. You can always pseudocode everything, or at least talk them through it, even if you have no clue. Last thing, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. That's not a bad thing, but the thing that will always get you that step further is kind of help me find out, or asking a question following up. I don't know this, but I was thinking maybe this. Could you give me pointers or something along those lines? But yeah.
I just want to chime in with one more thing. We hired an entry-level developer about a year ago, and it was a battle with my manager to go with the recommendation that my coworker and I picked over what he wanted. And the reason that we saw through, the reason why we chose this one particular candidate was much about attitude. He was coming off of a stint in it was military, I can't remember which branch, but he didn't have a lot of experience. He actually was doing a lot of training on his own time and taking courses on stuff like Code Academy. And he did some projects off to the side, and I believe he had one short gig contracting role somewhere. And my manager didn't like that very much. He wanted to go with some other candidates who we recommended against them for one reason or another. But the long and short of it is that we wanted this one particular person because much of their attitude was very positive about doing training, doing whatever they would need to learn the skills needed for the role. And maybe they didn't get every answer right. Like they were saying, you don't need to be perfect. But attitude does come in very, it's a very important but very important thing to have when you're doing interviews.
Thank you. Any other audience questions before I jump in? I'm going to get Austin first.
So my question was like, how much of like your job was like pre-existing knowledge versus like what you guys like picked up like as you guys started working? Like, would you guys say it's like you guys picked up like most of like what your job is like as you guys sort of like grew into your role?
So me personally, when I got my first job, I knew basically when it comes to coding syntax. I knew almost nothing. I knew nothing about the software industry as a whole, how it works, the types of positions that are out there. I just knew I wanted to play with code. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to solve problems. And as I went from company to company, I learned a lot more about the industry. I learned kind of basically everything I know and most of my marketable skills through experience. College is great, giving you that stepping stone, helping you out with learning, all of that stuff, but you're always going to continue learning no matter what, and you're going to keep on finding that there's so much to it that there's no way that you could have learned everything in school. And it's so broad that you keep on going and learning in your specific field. So as one more example for me, I kind of gravitated towards medical field and then DoD work. So like help, like government type stuff. So I know kind of a lot about what's going on in DoD and contracting, how to deal with customers who are in the medical field or the military. That's kind of my strong suit. And then also learning how everything works just by kind of asking questions, kind of hoping to sponge as much information off of anyone that's better than me, or not anyone that's better than me, anyone that works with me, really, because everyone has something to offer in that respect.
I think that, first of all, I agree with everything that you said. There's no way, you're going to find once you start working that you're learning so much that's unique to the company that you work for and the specific role that you're in. And you're going to be like, that wasn't taught to me in school, but that's okay. School's not a waste. And hopefully you're building a good core, knowledge and fundamentals here. And that's what you're going to then use to prove during your interview, right? But I think for me personally, I like what you said about don't be afraid to say you don't know. That's a big skill. But of course, also, when you're working, do your due diligence and do what was expected of you first. In other words, don't get assigned something and then, oh, I don't know how to do this. And then he's going to ask you, well, what did you do already? Well, nothing, I don't know. But you should be asking questions. In the news, this might date me a little bit, but in school growing up, it was like, oh, well, you write a newspaper article, you who, what, where, why, when, right? I mean, those type of ideas can help you figure out a problem. You need context, right? Who has the problem? What is the issue? How long has it been going on for? How many people does this problem affect? Once you have all that information, you could maybe solve it, maybe you can't, and maybe now you're going to your mentor, your supervisor, your manager, your leader, your coach. But they want to see that you did the work, right? So that's that process in where you will start to learn all this stuff. You will sponge up the information. So I think coming in with a core set of skills and knowing that no matter what situation you're put in, you can ask a simple set of questions and that'll get you closer to defining what the problem is. That's problem solving. That's the very beginning of problem solving. And that's what you should bring.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo off of there. So I think it gave you the foundation to understand what you're supposed to do. You have the understanding of coding. Hopefully you're learning about documentation. But I've worked at multiple hospitals. I've worked at multiple companies. Every place does it completely different. You're going to go from one hospital to the other hospital, and I guarantee you they're going to say, I don't know why they taught you that way. This is the right way to do it. And that's okay. But be a sponge. And the one thing I've learned, and I would recommend for everybody, is when you do start that, you'll have the foundation. Learn, but leave your ego at the door. Do not go in with that ego. It's something I learned the hard way. I went in, I know what I'm doing, I know how to code, this is how it should be done. And if I would have put that ego aside in the beginning, I probably would have learned a lot quicker. be proud of what you do. Do not get me wrong. Be proud and be confident in what you do, but leave that ego. So when someone pulls you aside, like, hey, I saw you pull that data this way. It was good, but it could be even better if you tried X, Y, and Z. Be okay with that. And if you do that, you're going to be better off.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great comment, and I wanted to add that that reminds me, be coachable. One thing that I look for in my interviews is I ask someone, what does feedback mean to you? And they'll be like, that's when the mic's too close to the speaker, and it's an AV joke. But in all seriousness, if I have had students where when I give them feedback just like that, hey, you did this well, but consider this next time. They're like, okay, sure. Thank you for letting me know. Wow, I love that person. That's someone I want to work with. And then I'll have students who they get in their feels, like they take it to heart. And there's no reason for that. And I'll tell people that I lead, none of the feedback that I give you, if it's constructive, I don't say negative, is personal. None of it. I can still work with you. I'll be fine with you. But if you take this personally, then that's a you problem. And nobody wants to work with someone like that. So I say this, and I think it's really important. You all are very young, and leaving your ego at the door is very important. Be humble, free yourself of that ego, and then you can learn.
And I can just give you guys a story about how different companies can be. My first job out of college, real job, was like Merrill Lynch. And I remember everything there was, if you don't know how this works, read the system requirements document, and it'll tell you exactly to a T what it should look like, what it does, and what's the desired outcome. And then I think like my first or second week at Finxact, I was working on designing something for Swoops functionality. And I went over to the developer who was creating it, and I was like, hey, Vince, how does this work? And he looked at me and goes, well, I haven't coded that yet. So if you just want to write it how you think it should work, I'll just code it that way. And so that's just how things can be. Like, it's so crazy. And I'll say the larger the company, the more structure you're going to get. And then the smaller, newer companies, it's going to be more wide open. So kind of keep that in mind for like your personality fit, because I'm more like the startup, like small school, little guy versus big guy. So I enjoyed that environment a lot. So, but that's just one example of how crazy things can be.
So I would just like to add to be open-minded, especially when you just recently graduated from college, and you're starting to get an understanding of the field, whether it's it's in healthcare or it's more in government or any of those fields. Learn from the coworkers that you're with, because they've been in the field for 10, 20, 30 years. So being respectful to them and being open-minded, because when you graduate from Chestnut Hill, from college, you essentially have the foundational knowledge. It's just being able to grow that knowledge, because IT is constantly changing every single day, and so when you're working in a hospital or in government, the coworkers that you work with, they understand the ins and outs of how things work. So they will as long as you keep an open mind, you'll be able to grow and every single day and learn new things.
So what you learn from school is all you have right now, but the more you go through your career, it will go the other way around. What you learn from school will become like just the foundation, and everything else you will learn in the field. And also every time you start a new job at a new company, you will feel like you don't know anything. So be okay with not knowing and learning on the go.
And one thing I also wanted to add is even after college, continue to learn. Continue to develop your skills. Use like Udemy or one of the online classes to learn a lot of the certifications. Like I'm learning the Google Professional in cybersecurity. So continue to develop those skills even after you graduate college, because those can really help you along the way. Essentially, if you're still looking for a job, you can add that to your resume, because if as it will show your potential employer that, hey, I'm willing to learn even outside of work. So those can really help you as well.
Hello, I think you started sort of answering my question. I work with the students who sometimes have an impression of what IT is, and so I wanted to know, is there either a professional organization or a site or some kind of subscription, something where I can tell them, look at this or follow this to sort of see and have a more realistic idea? Because usually what they say is, I know I can get a job. I know I can, but they don't know what the job is. They don't know what it entails. So is there any opportunity or site or professional organization, obviously if it's in Philadelphia, it'd be better for them, that they could sort of see what it's about, so that way they can make a more informed decision?
One group that I wish I found years ago, which I haven't been quite active with it, but they're still out there, is Philly.net. And it's really helpful for software development. So if any of you out there would like to get into coding, that's a good group to follow. They sometimes have called what's Coding Boot Camp, which is to learn some of the updated Microsoft stack, whether it's .NET or Azure, which is one of the popular ones when I was at the last coding camp. You're going to leave with a headache, but what you're also going to leave with is a lot of information about some of the newer stuff or updated stuff that you can go pick up on your own. So yeah, Philly.net. I know they have a LinkedIn group, so it's out there too.
I would say stay off of Instagram. It lies to you guys one way or the other. Well, some people are going to say my job is the greatest, and some people are going to be like, oh, this is the world's worst industry. It's all a lie. And I say that as a person that's on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn, and there's groups you can join, like data analytics, it's like AI. I'll give you the names afterwards, but there's a variety of one. And I'm not active on them, but I watch the conversations happening. It's a lot of professionals. I definitely recommend LinkedIn. It's very professional. People are there and networking all the time. You all are Chestnut Hill. You have Chestnut Hill alumni. Just go on there and just start finding people and LinkedIning them. I'm not kidding you. The amount of people I've gotten people LinkedIning me with questions of like, hey, I see you have a role open. I'm not ready for that role, but what would I need to be ready for that role? And as a director of analytics, I don't know if anybody wants to get into analytics. I highly recommend it. You just put yourself on the radar. And it may not be for my job, but when I started this position, every person I'm with now is a director or above at a company. So I might not be hiring, but if my friend's like, hey, I'm looking for a role, do you know anybody looking for an entry level? I'm going to remember you. So I highly recommend get on LinkedIn, get a professional picture. That's all I'm going to point out. Get a professional picture. It doesn't have to be someone you pay. Just put a sports jacket on, look nice, nothing crazy. And get on there and just start following people in the industry. You'll learn so much. That's what I recommend.
So I will second LinkedIn. Very good place to go and find people. Again, reach out at random companies. There are plenty of groups on there, that type of thing. A lot of the companies, like in job listings, they'll list the hiring manager. Kind of reach out to them. Honestly, a lot of the nerdy guys, the lower level, are the really good ones to reach out to because they are nerdy and really like to talk about the things they're nerdy about. So like me, I love interviews because I like talking to other people that are also the type of nerd I am. Anyway, the next big thing, which I actually use a lot more than I thought I would, Discord servers. So for those of you that don't know, Discord is kind of a messaging platform where has a server, so you can have a group of people, you can direct message people, stuff like that. So I was actually, I don't know, some amount of years ago, I was trying to solve a problem for using basically graphics programming, kind of what gaming would be programmed in. And I found a server called Game Programmers or something like that. And I was able to ask my questions there, different things. I was able to, after I even got out of that role, I still would be like, hey, random question, what do you think about this topic? Because I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying to understand the right way to do things. So I would go and start a conversation. Just being a part of those Discord servers, having some sort of community where you can ask those questions in a really informal way as well. But the other thing I will say, which you may disagree with me on, is YouTube. There are some content creators that will go and have accurate type things of more so like this is how you get into this role, not the day in the life videos. They're not as accurate. But YouTube can be a good source, but always follow up and either honestly go to the comments. You can comment and see people calling other people out, because that's always a good way to figure out what's real and what's not. But I have found that to be useful as well, kind of seeing how do I get into this particular job, not necessarily what does it look like for someone, because that usually gets the social media as the very flashy type things that are just for the views. So, yeah.
Piggybacking on the LinkedIn, there was just one other piece I wanted to add. When hiring, I do a search over the internet for all my finalist candidates, Facebook, Twitter, anything I can find. And if I can find a trail from your days in college, from your photos, that you don't want necessarily employers to see, being the fall semesters, you're getting close to graduation, now's a good time to start closing those accounts or locking them up more so that future employers do not find them. They will start looking to see what kind of quality candidate they are bringing into the workplace.
Unless you have like good stuff on your Facebook that, I don't think you guys use Facebook anymore, but we used to go, I went with Liz actually to a couple of meetups, of data meetups, and those were great because you will it were in the evening and 3 or 4 people would go up the front and show what they are doing with data. Someone was art related, someone was doing, I think, music based on data or paintings based on data, and some were like more professional, like I did this study and this heat map. So those kind of meetups are always nice. And if you don't want to talk to anyone, you can always just stand in the back and hear, and you will see people like say what they're actually doing with data.
I feel seen.
Other audience questions? Okay, Will.
Hi, my name is Will Sheridan. I recruit for our student program at USLI. I work with True. And I have a question for True, but also for everybody up there. True, what is your favorite thing about working with college-level students that are working in the full-time space? And also for all of you, if they were to do internships, what's your favorite part about working with college students in your full-time roles?
I would say one of my favorite things is just sounds corny, but as you get older, it's easy to hate on the younger generation. And I've seen a lot of bright people, a lot of people that you may not think are that way. And so it really level sets me and keeps me grounded. There's a lot of potential out there on you guys. So seeing the growth, seeing some students eventually get full-time roles or get, I've written recommendations. I had a student get a top secret clearance level role at Lockheed Martin. And I met with an FBI agent because for top secret, I had to meet with the agent. For secret level clearance, it was a phone call, right? So he could have been outside my door, I don't know. But I met with this agent and he got this job and I was so proud of him. Seeing these success stories, that is very satisfying. I'm doing it because I love to do it. And yeah, seeing their growth. Well, I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question? Well, here we go.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things when I worked at CHOP was when we brought the new interns in. It was so awkward. They didn't look at each other, they didn't talk to each other, and they just looked at their laptops. And week by week, you would just see the bond between them. So the first job you get, you're gonna create a bond with the people. You're going through it together. Maybe you have a director, manager that's a nightmare. You're gonna have the stories. After work, you're gonna grab a drink. And it is hilarious to see. First, they're not near each other. Then they get a little closer. Then they get a little closer. Then all of a sudden, I'm hearing about the weekend plans that they all just had and coming in and having fun. And they're working together. They're collaborating. And I love that. And then they just start immersing themselves with the whole team. So that's my number thing for y'all. I love seeing the growth from day one to when you leave as an intern. And I'll say for everyone like an entry level, it's just fun to see the growth. And when they get that first promotion, it's really cool. They came in, they had the fundamentals as you asked before, and they learned and they sponged and they earned that promotion. Nothing's ever given here. So they earned that promotion, and seeing when you get to slide the piece of paper over, when you bring it up that, hey, you got that level 2 role or whatever the situation is, it's pretty cool.
I think I would just say, so I work in like banking and fintechs and stuff like that. So it's an older industry with older people that generally work there. And I remember I was probably one of the youngest people at the company. And when we wanted to hire someone who was like 24, it was like a week-long conversation about, oh, is this person way too immature? Like, are they going to do this? But what I'll say is the younger people now that work at our company bring like a totally fresh perspective into an entire industry, basically, right? So everything for us was like, oh, this kind of looks old. Like, you're not necessarily thinking about like how things look at the end or like keeping up on current trends. And when younger people come in, they always ask a lot of good questions. And I always hate to answer, if someone asks me, why do we do it this way? I hate the answer like, oh, because we just do it that way. Like, there should be a reason. And it keeps me honest. So I'm like, you know what, that's a good point. Like, this is bad now. Like 5 years ago, this was good, but now like that you guys are calling it out. So don't be afraid. Like when you do come in, you don't have to know everything. You can just ask like, hey, like, why is this way? And it could be something that like, because honestly, there's stuff I work on and like, I don't touch for like 3 years and I kind of just forget about it. And someone comes in and goes, this isn't like that good anymore, kind of. And then it makes me think and I'm like, oh yeah, good point. Like, let's fix that up. And then that's how you can kind of earn work at your job too. Like you can kind of point out some flaws and things you think could be done better. And that's stuff you can add to your resume. So that's probably the thing I like the most.
Thinking back to not where I am right now, but my previous employer, we brought on an intern from the school that I went to before, and when he first started, I was mentoring him, and he was afraid to make any software changes whatsoever unless I was standing right next to him. And as time moved on, he would get more and more comfortable to the point where he stopped asking me for help, and then I kind of felt a little sad. But then looking back at it, it was a great feeling because he had learned so much, and he ended up getting an offer from my boss. And the next thing I know, he's got, it was a contracting company that we were working for. So he's working with his own clients. And that was just a great feeling to see him go from a senior in college to then getting a job offer. He graduated in January, so they brought him on right after his graduation. And he hung around there for about 1.5 years before he moved on to his next position. But they were talking about him constantly, and it was just a great feeling.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, I have one and then we'll probably wrap it up. And this might be a little heated and it was a couple of questions, so that's why I'm summarizing this. Do you think advancements in AI will result in jobs being replaced or jobs being made easier?
they would be different. I started in industry automation, my career, so I had this conversation when I went with we're going to automate, I don't know, this bakery or whatever. People would be like, oh, I'm gonna lose my job. No, unless you don't want to evolve with how your job evolves. So the goal of automation, of artificial intelligence, of all that is to make humanity's life easier. So if you learn new technologies, that's why I also told you, like when you start, you're right after college, what you learn in college is all you have. But as you go along with your career, it should be just the base, and you should be learning new stuff. And that way, AI will transform jobs. You will have to do the things that you did before in a different way. So as long as you learn how to do those things in the newest way, you will be fine, and your job won't disappear, especially if you're doing the code. Like, someone has to create the AI, right?
So one thing with AI, it's especially in my field, it's something that's going to help in the medical field. Like at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, we're introducing ChatGPT, a secure version of ChatGPT to help with providers having conversations with their patients, and being able to document that conversation in documentation and notes in their medical records. But it's being able to, so it's going to be able to help for us to support that kind of technology, essentially. It's not going to essentially replace, but it's going to help make the conversations even better and more accurate.
I'll say yes and no. I think it depends on what field you're in. I think if you're in government, healthcare, you're years off. I think if you're for profit, if they can find the way to cut a job or two for ROI purposes, be careful. I think some business analyst positions, things like that, data collection, I don't want to say simple positions because they're all very important, but positions like that. But I think if you're a coder, I don't necessarily think that position is going to go away. I think it's only going to enhance it. So some things we've done is use AI for insights. So instead of a data scientist on my team, I want to work on this project. What we did now is we use AI to determine insights, to determine what project they should be working on. So now all of a sudden they're doing more meaningful work instead of work that maybe kind of is going to produce something. Now we have data to kind of support that. So I definitely think AI has a place. And I think as in the healthcare world, I know with note dissertation with physicians, the amount of times that it cuts down, because doctors are notoriously known, just to let you all know a secret, they're terrible at note taking. They're terrible at their notes. If a hospital wants to be better with their data, having AI to assist with that is huge. The one thing I will let all of you all know though, do not use AI for your work. Learn the hard way. If you're coding, you're learning SQL, Python, whatever the situation is, while you're in college, don't use AI. Learn it the hard way. Submit a project that might be wrong, but learn from it. When you're interviewing, do not use AI. I am telling you right now, I've had 4 people interview for a position, and I knew they used AI right away. Do not use AI, especially when you're coding. They don't code in a way a human will do a lot of times. So for example, I've called a couple people. We gave a SQL exam. They use AI for it. ChatGPT. Patient is the table. You either use PAT, PT if you're in the field. You do not use AZ1. That is something right away you're going to notate. So I'm telling you, all of you right now, learn ChatGPT, learn AI, but do not use it for your work. You will be 1,000 times better off.
And just a note on that, I have a little more to say on AI, but we hired a consulting company and we paid them a good amount of money to go through our documentation and kind of rewrite it and make it a little more readable, I guess. And you know what they did? They ran it through a ChatGPT, and I was reading it and I was like, this is this just got run through ChatGPT and they didn't change a thing. And it was noted, and we were very pissed about it. So it's very tempting to do, but totally agree. You have to learn what you're doing. You can use it as like a troubleshooting method, I think is good sometimes, but don't ever submit anything for school or a resume or your work. Just don't throw it in there and then just hand it off. It's very clear at this point. Maybe it gets better as it ages, but right now. But the other thing I'll say is, now being a part of a large company at Pfizer, anytime I want to use new software, I have to submit like a VEQ, which is basically a huge Excel document that asks a bunch of questions. And there's a new tab on there that's AI. And basically what they want to know is, if we give you our documentation, what are you doing with that? Is that ever going to be used down the road, right? And so that's just like the one layer is like our documentation. And then you get to our proprietary software. Well, if someone's using, AI with that and it goes to a third-party company, what's going on there, right? Like, that's a huge issue. So the technology might move very quickly, but you're going to start to see a lot of bigger companies start to say, hey, like, what's going on here? And especially like smaller startups too. I can tell you, when I had to sign an NDA when I started there, like, think about like Google and their search engine when they first started. Do you think they would ever run that through AI and give it away to anyone? Because that's your moneymaker right there. So as fast as it might move, corporate America will move very slowly. And healthcare, banking, banking, I'll tell you, most banks run on 30-year-old software that my dad used to work on in this programming language called COBOL, and just my dad's retired. So if that gives you any idea how slow some of these companies can and will move. And the other thing you can look at is like Adobe with their suite. They just put in a little clause there that says, hey, we're going to use your artwork, anything you create in Photoshop or Illustrator, for our AI. Well, suddenly everyone's really mad about that. And anytime I see that, I start looking at all the stuff I have that was made in Photoshop or Premiere Pro, and I'm like, well, you know what I'm not going to be able to use pretty soon? Adobe products. So there's a lot still to be figured out with regulations and how companies interact with AI. So as fast as you do see it moving, just know corporate America will move much slower than you think is humanly possible.
I'm not an expert. I'm not going to make too many predictions, but I will say that I view it as a tool right now, and that tool cannot be creative. You're the human being behind it. So I'll say something that's more topical. I've had people use it to fix their writing, but just as you mentioned, you want to work on your fundamentals. You want to be a good writer, understand grammar and syntax, right? I've had someone who, upon being given some feedback, totally used GPT to write better, to write more professionally. And how I know this is how flowery the language is. It's like, "Dear True, I hope this letter finds you well." And I'm like, whoa, this is not their voice at all. Like, it's better to use your voice and use it and do it correctly, because you may not have that tool, and then what will you be left with? Your own skill set. So definitely use the fundamentals, and or build your fundamentals, make them strong. And yeah, for now, what I see is it is a powerful tool that can help you, but can also expose you.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to chime in also with, I think it's a great troubleshooting tool, but do not rely on it to write code for you, especially. I used it a couple weeks ago to troubleshoot a problem that I was having. I made sure not to just go verbatim with what it spat out. One thing that you have to consider with these large language models is that they can be out of date. They can only learn what data is fed into them. Another thing is that you have to be careful with copyright. So if you generate code from ChatGPT or Gemini, is that going to be copywritten? Are you going to be in violation of anything in particular when you go to put that into your own code? I don't want to say that I'm against AI. We actually are using it with to help find security holes within the software that we check into our source control library. So we have a plugin, I think it's called Sneak, and it will analyze the packages that are included on our software. It'll take a look at the the code itself, and it will give us back a report 5 minutes after we check in code updates to tell us whether or not there's any security risks, whether or not they're high, medium, low, critical, and so forth. And about being able to detect when somebody uses AI, I had that issue last night with my son because he was working on a science project, and he wrote this beautiful language for an 8th grader, and I'm like, dude, come on. And he's like, well, like, you have to use your own words here or else it's going to be very obvious to your teacher. So just keep that in mind. It's very obvious to pretty much anybody who's going to take a look at whether or not it's your code or your writing.
So I have some interesting opinions here. It will make you work a lot harder if you try to make it do things for you. Right? It'll make you work a lot harder because exactly what he was saying about it doesn't sound like me. You're going to have to read it. You're going to have to rewrite it. You're going to have to work harder to understand what it said than potentially just learning it yourself. So that's one thing. As far as coding, I actually did a little experiment of some sort of open source bot that used GPT-4o to actually write a piece of software. So it will also paint you into corners. So the big thing is that it only has a limited context of what it can actually see or do. So me, I recognized what I was doing. I saw the corners it was pinning itself into. I saw it keep on repeating itself and not actually changing anything. But that was only because I knew what to look for. So I think it's a really good tool to use as a diagnostic tool. You can actually go and get some good ideas. You can have it write code for you, but to give you ideas of how to go about doing it yourself. Because if you don't actually understand what it's spitting out, what it's telling you, you don't know what the heck it's gonna do. You're gonna end up getting so lost in what you're doing that once you're asked one question, it's just gonna completely break down. It's never gonna work. So understanding it beforehand and using it as a thing to bounce ideas off of, something to rubber duck, like that is a really good thing. The other thing is you have to take into account that none of it is private. You cannot take company data and put it in there, which means you have to understand your problems better too if you use it. So as an example, and this is kind of also what I did with the whole Stack Overflow question type thing, you have to create a scenario to be able to write a scenario that has your issue in it. You'd have to be able to make it generic. That way you can pass that into it. So you're not passing your actual company code into it. But again, you have to understand exactly what your problem is and how to actually reproduce it and all of that kind of stuff, which again, it's super helpful for that kind of thing, but you have to know it first. So it's not a shortcut, it is a tool, and if you don't do your due diligence, it will not do you well. It will have cause you a lot more issues and a lot more work. One thing it is really good for is doing kind of repetitive work, but again, you always have to check it. For example, I was writing some unit tests and I wrote a bunch of requirements out because I had to do that for my documentation. And I was able to have it write some of those tests for me. Didn't get them all right, didn't get them all to a point where they're good, but it gave me a starting point where I didn't have to write like 500 lines of code myself. I had to go through and change it and just kind of go through line by line. Some stuff it did okay, some stuff it didn't, but it was a thing to help me kind of get it to a point where I didn't have to spend all the time doing the repetitive part of the exact same setup or making some sort of utility or things like that. As for if it will replace jobs in the future, in some degree, it will. But it will open up more jobs because there are actually roles that kind of our prompt engineers. They actually have people who use AI tools to write prompts, probably for the same contracting company that you are using. Probably had one of those guys. But the big thing is it's going to be a tool that's going to help you guys get better and learn a little bit more. You just have to look at it that way. Not a replacement, not something that's going to do the work for you. And also using that for assignments and papers and stuff like that it's only going to hurt you guys in the end, honestly. Because once you get into the job market, people aren't really forgiving. If you keep on not being able to do the job, not be willing to learn, things like that, they'll find someone else who can. You don't get as many chances in the real world. It's unfortunate, but true.
As someone who works in AI and ML, I can tell you right now it's creating jobs. We continue to expand our roles. We need data scientists. We need engineers. That creates the entry-level positions for the support for our end users and for just managing company equipment. Working in AI, we are a 100% remote company of 400 employees. We still have technical issues that we need our support teams for. The machine learning engineers that we work with the data coding, we think we get things right all the time. We go live in production. For example, we were trying to roll out a new feature of guns and bombs in Gmail. AK-47s, AK-15s, Alaska, AK. Our Alaska customers were not happy. So we had to quickly roll back at 2 a.m., rolling back a model that has to be live 24/7 with 99.9% contractual uptime with many states across the country. So the jobs are out there. AI is creating jobs as much as it is eliminating. And it's really exciting time if you can get into a company that works in AI to see what's all happening in the back end. Because right now you're only looking at the front end, using it for code, using it for your jobs, for school. The back end work is a whole different world that not many people get to see and truly experience.
I just want to add, AI is so much more than ChatGPT. I know ChatGPT is the most, like the language generating models are the most popular, but there is so much more, and I think he would be able to tell you, don't think AI, okay, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is just the tip of the iceberg.
Also, one more thing I'll say is it's been around for a lot longer than ChatGPT and stuff like that. AWS actually had a really cool product that would go and analyze doctors' like medical diagnostic notes and be able to parse that out for medications, times to take them, stuff like that. And that was like 5-7 years ago, and even way before that, like a company I was working for was actually trying to make a model to help with diagnosing diabetic retinopathy. Been around for a while and it encompasses a lot more, just like you said.
Okay, thank you, panelists.